Jesus. I don't even know how to introduce this video. I've thought of all kinds of titles, but because it's a new kind of content that I'm making on the channel, I have no idea what to come up with. So I'm just going to tell you. The title of the video that I'm going to be reacting to is going to be called Why We Think the Red Pill Community is Necessary, Even with Its Faults. And I'm very uncomfortable about this subject. And the easy path would have been for me to not even film the video, but I still wanted to do it because I guess I'm forcing myself, because of what's happening in my personal life, to engage in subjects that I personally feel afraid of. Like, I'm going towards that fear of talking about things that I already talk about in my private and personal life with friends, but bringing them to a stage that allows me to really own up to the ideas that are in my current mind state, to see and verify, do I actually believe these things because I believe them? And am I willing to stand by these ideas in public, or am I just saying these things because I feel they're cool ideas and I want to conform with like these small groups and small friends that I find? So the reason why I'm bringing this particular subject is because as an African man born and raised in Cameroon, moving to the US, got married 2018, and now dealing with a very new circumstance that has forced me to get down the rabbit hole of the red pill. It's funny. I'm going to die. It's funny because I watched this video a couple of months back. It came out only in March, right? But it feels to me like it came out like 5 months ago. So when I initially watched this video, I did not get some of the feelings that I got when I watched it again recently. And as I'll be watching it now, I will try to analyze what Abba is talking in the video, because this is one of the few videos where I've seen him being very, very serious to the point of getting almost pissed off on camera. And I could sense a lot of that energy and understand better now, because I've gone through some of the emotions that he's talking about, and I'm still going through them. And the cool thing about people like Abba and Preach, and a lot of the people in the manosphere, is that they can give you different perspectives. And I've come across a lot of content that disagrees with them and gives the pros and the cons and all that stuff. And I think this video really opens up, telling you straight up that there are things that are wrong with the manosphere, with the community, but here's why the community exists and here's the necessity. And the reason why I wanted to make this reaction is because a lot of the people who watch my channel are predominantly, I would say, my guess is like most of us are African, right? Or have a connection to Africa. Someone maybe you're married to an African spouse, or you're living there. And a lot of the content I've watched that has to do with the red pill and manosphere is almost, I don't know if it's because of the algorithm, but it's almost always skewed to talk about the African American community. And as a Cameroonian, as an African, I've been watching this content, I'm seeing how, it correlates to the culture. I can see the relationship and why it works. Not only it works, why some of the explanations and the examples actually, justify and work for the society in which the people who produce the content live in. And then when I look back to Cameroon, I start wondering, is it that this content, like this red pill, this idea of, female-male dynamics doesn't exist, or it only exists in the West, is it missing? And part of me doesn't think that it is. And so as I'm watching this video, and by the end of it, I'm going to start sharing my ideas about why even men like me, African men, need to understand this concept. I need to be able to pick what works for them, because I don't think that, in fact, I have theories. I have some theories as to why we are not as vocal about these things. And, feel free to share in the comments what you think. But as we watch the video and as we get to it, I'm going to share some of my theories about why it seems that we are in this danger zone that might get worse in the next 5 to 10 years, but we're not even aware of it because of the way we were raised, because of the way we talk about things or don't talk about certain things as an African culture. A lot of what I'm saying doesn't make sense, but if you're coming to the channel for the first time, my name is Kamga. On this channel, I'll do essays, reactions, and reviews. And today we're doing a reaction to Abba and Preach. I've been consuming a lot of Abba and Preach, and the reason why I'm uncomfortable is because I am leaning into my authentic self, which is a lot more intellectual about this content and a lot more uncertain about certain things. So the more I talk about them, the more I discuss these ideas, the more I start to crystallize what is true, what isn't true, and remove the aspects that I think may not work for me. Let's get into the video.
Today's topic. I disagree with the red pill community, but I 100% understand that there's an absolute need for it. People often complain about like the rhetoric that comes out of like the manosphere or whatever. And I understand some of those because I disagree with a lot of the sentiments that they share. I've been called a blue pill and purple pill and whatever the term that they have. Honestly, I find the whole Matrix references super cringy. But it's
in the Matrix, when Morpheus was trying to get Neo out of the Matrix, right, he gave him two choices. You have blue pill, red pill. Take the blue pill, You sleep, you wake up like nothing ever happened. You continue your life, keep working in the company that you're working for. You take the red pill and you get unplugged from the matrix and face reality and have to deal with it for the rest of your life. So the name the red pill comes from that reference, which means it's not actually a very long, it's not far away idea. But people like Patrice O'Neill and other people who've been probably before them, the Matrix came out in 1994, so it's not like it's that far away. Wait, is it? It is. It's like, yeah, long time ago, but not that long. So there have been people who have been talking about some of the ideas over time, which is why one of my theories about the way the red pill has evolved is the same way religion has evolved, the same way feminism has evolved, which is that the original creators of the idea, or the people wanted to come together and solve a problem, had good vision. They wanted to get things sorted out, but then over time, human beings, the way we do things, we take what works for us and we change and we leave out the other things. So it's evolved to become this massive thing where you have all these names like Steffi Skoll, Kevin Samuels, MTR, Urban Preach. There's a bunch of people who I would say have different churches. I wouldn't call it churches. It's like, I'm just using the analogy. I don't mean that they have churches, because they do have followers and they do preach. But point is, you have an ideology that has different facets, and you have different people that say promote different faces of that ideology. And then sometimes you find that a lot of the ideologies have things in common, but they also have disadvantages. And very few people take the time to extract what is actually helpful, what is actually working for them. It's like they just embrace all of it and then forget about the consequences of doing that. But just to give you an idea of what the whole idea of the red pill, blue pill thing is.
Honestly, I find the whole Matrix reference is super cringy, but it's 100% necessary. And I think one thing that people don't understand is that there's a lot of expectations placed on men in regards to the roles that they have to play in society, in regards to the roles that they have to play within the dating sphere. The idea that we have to approach, the idea that we have to be the one putting the foot forward and doing all this stuff. I'm not saying that women don't have the responsibilities. I'm just saying there's a lot placed on us, right? The big problem is that we have zero resources in the mainstream to know how to do these things. We don't learn it from our parents, because our parents oftentimes don't know what the they're doing. We don't learn at school, and our friends are just as clueless as we are. So what ends up happening is that we look towards media. But the thing is, men don't have shows like The View. Men don't have shows like women do, where they get to learn all the next beauty tips and have all their problems constantly talked about, other than sports shows. And so what ends up happening is that men turn towards alternative media. Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is a perfect example of that.
See, this is one of the reasons why I was personally worried about this video. As much as the video makes my point in the sense of the kind of content that is in there for men as a whole, I think when it comes to the African context and African cultural context, there's so many ideas. Like Joe Rogan, for example. If you are in Cameroon, there's a very high likelihood that you've never heard of you've never heard of Joe Rogan, you've never heard of Jordan Peterson. But there's a big but here, because the way the internet has diversified media content consumption, there's a high likelihood now of somebody finding Joe Rogan in Cameroon than before, right? So I cannot simply eliminate the fact that these people that he's calling are found mostly in the West, because nearly everybody has access to the internet now. Like, you have kids who have access to, content that they shouldn't be having access to. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And the example he's pointing out still doesn't, it doesn't cancel the fact that men don't have the kind of resources that they need in order to build character. And as he's going to go on to explore and expand on these things, man, it's just 1 minute, I'm already interrupting. There's so much to learn in this particular video about the things that push men to want this kind of content, including me. And by the end of the video, I'm going to share my own perspective on how I got into this and what I've learned on my own journey on this whole thing. All right, so let's just keep watching.
He blew up. But when he was just back in it was just a bunch of guys watching him all the time, because it's like the first time that they watched someone speak in long form about that they were going through. I'm talking back in 2013 when his podcast was like, setup. Right? I used to watch it back then. I was like, oh, okay, cool. One thing I've learned, just coming to realize with myself, is I remember when we first started doing videos, I used to be way more angry about a lot of stuff, right? And looking back now, I used to ask myself why I was so angry covering some of these topics. Wow. And it dawned on me that for so long, I've been having lived experiences with women that were either negative or super toxic. And when I would bring this up to people around me, they would gaslight me, or they'd be like, well, as a man, that's not a real thing. So, right, whether it be being hit, whether it be like women doing weird stuff, saying terrible things, and like just the lack of accountability that society seems to place on women in those kind of scenarios threw me for a loop. I couldn't believe it. And so I used to build up a certain level of resentment to the idea like they can just get away with this. And that we just constantly reinforce these ideas, right? And I would look towards media and I would watch, shows like, I'm pretty sure it's The View. I can't remember what it was, but a girl just talking about like cutting off a dude's pinot and throwing it in garbage dispenser. And everyone laughs and claps.
I don't know the circumstances. I don't know why he filed for divorce. I don't know what was going on between them. However, I do think it's quite fabulous. I mean, can you just imagine that thing whizzing around the disposal? It's like hysterical. But however, I think I would have just, depending on why she cut it off. I mean, it does.
You know, it depends on why she cut it off. I don't even need to watch a full clip to start a question. Like, how would that even be a question if the roles were reversed? I think that's what Abba's going to talk about. If it was reversed, would you be able to question, like, okay, depending on how, on why he cut her parts off?
Depend on the reasons why.
Does it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
She's on the TV for the next couple. Like, imagine a dude getting on a round table and everyone laughing about a girl's like pieces getting cut off down there. Never would happen. And I would constantly see this reinforced in media where women could touch dudes, grope them, do whatever they want, where they could hit dudes, and it's very popular and it's fine. But then anything that happens to us, we're just supposed to endure it because we're men. And over time, I used to get annoyed with like a lot of this stuff that was just commonplace. And you know, the crazy thing is, these women weren't bad people. They weren't people that were like extremely malicious, but they're raised in an environment that's told them this kind of stuff is acceptable.
Yep.
So you're talking about the norm. As I started doing these videos and I started venting, all that pent up resentment, all that anger coming out.
This is a part of the video that made me want to make this video because I'm just going to have to be honest with you. I'm currently going through a divorce right now, and that's actually one of the things that sent me down the path to really consume a lot of red pill content. And I haven't even made videos on the channel to talk about this yet because it's something I'm still processing. I'm still figuring out like what I'm supposed to learn out of this, how I'm supposed to get out of this, how I'm supposed to deal with it. So when Abba mentioned the anger, I realized how when I talk about what happened, the conversation that I've had with my soon-to-be ex-wife, with like my parents or my close friends, I get visibly angry. Like when I look back to the conversations in my head, and it's not because of, you know, what he's saying here that the women are doing and they're all that. I'm not saying, I don't even know if what I'm saying makes sense, because there's a certain level of anger that comes with feeling like something is wrong, but everybody around you makes you think that you're not. Like what he mentioned, like the whole idea of gaslighting, where you bring up a frustration that you have and you say, this is a problem that I have, this is something that is not working, and somebody makes you feel like what you're saying doesn't make any sense, or what you're saying, just that's the way it is, this is the way it works, this is the way it's supposed to be. And I can totally relate to Abba's presentation of the idea that when you realize that you are not wrong, you get really pissed off. You get so pissed off to the point that if you don't find a way to deal with these emotions in a healthy way, it can lead you to the other end of the red pill bridge, where you have these men who actually hate women, who are actually doing terrible things because for them, the previous actions of the previous women in their lives justify their current actions, which I don't agree with, none at all. So I can see, and I could totally relate to this particular sentence of when you find out that you weren't stupid, that you weren't crazy, it can get you really angry. And that anger comes out the more you talk, because when I start talking, just today I was having a conversation with a friend about some things that have been happening and that have happened, and that led us to this particular point of getting a divorce. And by the end of that conversation, I could feel that I wasn't in a good mood. And that is something that I noticed. And just to back up a little bit about his whole show, about The View, the reason why I also have, certain level of discomfort talking about this particular content with these videos, because I don't see the African equivalent of some of these shows to have people talk about these things. But I can see how it's actually okay. Like, I don't know how many meetings, for example, let me tell my mom and my dad. My mom has like 12,000 meetings. Sisters of the West, Sisters of the South, Anglophone Teachers Association. Like, there's always something that women are always having together, which is like a grouping where they talk and they share and they discuss and they celebrate and do things. But very few African men have regular groupings, and even those who do have very few of them. They're usually like elitists, like once every month or something like that. And like, even remove the TV shows, like if you take away even TV shows that talk about women's issues, just focus on like groups or meetings that have men coming together to talk about men's issues and discuss them. I mean, hell, why am I even going too far? A friend and I tried to create a WhatsApp group where we'll have more men talking about, like bonding together and building like not even a mastermind, more like a community of men to talk about what is going on in their relationships, about their money, their health, to work together and build, to learn from each other. But that failed because men don't talk. Cameroonian men, from my small sample size, they don't want to share about what is going on, even among themselves. Like, it's not a thing of going on public or on the internet and talking about your feelings. This is like, all right, I'm a friend with you, we're amongst friends here, let's talk about our issues. It doesn't happen. And so the reason why I totally relate with a lot of the content is because even though he's talking about shows in the West that have these forums that allow women to talk about things that they would not do if reversed, I don't see situations where you have African men who have communities that are built to actually support them and help them deal with things that they are supposed to deal with because they are men. End of rant.
I could feel it. Just all that pent up resentment, all that anger coming out. I could feel it. Just all of it, just pop, pop, pop. For a period, I actually went to the red pill stuff. I was watching that. I think probably from the ages of like 18 to 25, because as a young man, you're told you have to do the approach, you have to do all this stuff, right? But I don't know what I'm doing. It's awkward. I go up to these ladies and hard rejections and self-esteem. So I'm like, I need help. So what did I do? Pickup artist. I read the book, The Game. I watched Keys to the VIP, which is oddly enough a show that was shut down just for teaching dudes game, right? I would watch all these stuff and I was like, cool, I'm learning. But they also had some toxic ideas, terrible ideas. But I'm like, I have no alternative. Where else am I going to learn? Who's talking about it? Who? Nobody. Then I go on YouTube, find Joe Rogan. I find a couple of other red pill folks. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm learning some stuff, but I'm indoctrinating this thing. By the time I started 24, 25, I started to realize some of this stuff is bad, and I took myself from that environment. But I also recognized it filled a void in my life that no one else was able to fill. There are no resources to teach young men these skills. None whatsoever. But we expect them to be good at it.
It's not only that. Is they expect all these men to do all these things. And the price for failure is so big. The price of failure, not only for your self-esteem, but just you being labeled a creep, it costs a lot.
Yeah.
It's really the cost as well about it. I realized, one of my friends realized how much the cost was, that whenever she was talking that, oh yeah, man, I was at the pharmacy,
yeah,
and I saw my boyfriend, so I tapped it on the ass and it was not my boyfriend. And they're like, oops, and then I left and my boyfriend was there and we all laughed. And I was like, if I think I spot my girlfriend turned in a public environment, I'm gonna make sure it's my girlfriend. I can't just, because I cannot afford, as a man, as a black man, to just tap the booty of just some random girl.
Nope.
And be like, oh, sorry.
Yep.
Because the cost of that is potentially bigger than just, oops.
Jordan Peterson.
Just a comment on that. Man, life in America is hard, right? And this is even going into like what preach just that's preach by the way. I was just talking just now about being a black man tapping girls, behind, just, hey, sorry, mistake, I thought you were my girlfriend. Like, can you imagine if the roles were flipped? It's, in fact, this is the funny part. When I imagine the situation, I'm like, you as a man, if a girl did that to you, you're probably like, oh yeah, that's cool, that's okay. Like, you might actually even feel like a compliment that she thought you were her boyfriend. But if the roles were reversed, man. And I'm just thinking about the way it's going to be in Cameroon. Like, I always try to take the context about the Cameroonian context, because as much as I currently live in the US, I'm looking at this, events happening on this continent, in this place I'm living, and I see these people on the internet. I have this very strong, bad, like a spider sense tingling that in the next couple of years, because we have a lot of more people moving, we already have a lot of immigrants from Cameroon in the US and indoctrinating a lot of its cultural differences. I think that we will find a lot of people, a lot of Africans who would behave in these ways and will carry on this personality traits and these cultural traits, not because they're choosing to be, because they live in an environment where it's acceptable and it's normal. And they will find themselves not being as African, if I put that as African, as they were when they moved. And I think it's inevitable. If you live in a place long enough, you pick up the culture of the place. And I can see that in many people. I can see that in the reactions that they have, in the way, you spend a lot of time, spend enough time out of the country. And when you go back, you will not even recognize what you left. It's almost inevitable because you have to adapt to an environment in which you are. So when these people talk about these things, right, and I try to relate about how this works in Cameroon and other African countries, I can't help but feel that there will be a time when this will be like a global thing, not just like an American thing or a Western thing, where it's like wherever there's a man and a woman, you will have these difficulties. And because the big problem that Abba is talking about is the idea that there are very few resources for men to be able to deal with these issues, you have a lot of pressure, a lot of pent-up anger, which unfortunately can lead to a lot of terrible things happening, as we've seen in the past couple of years, especially. And this is something that you probably don't know. I'm going to put a link to a video that we did a couple of years back to talk about toxic masculinity. And you watch that video and you hear us talking about things that it was, man, I can't even help to describe, like the idea that a man would do something so terrible to the person that they married as a spouse. I don't want to talk about it. Just going to link it there. Probably YouTube's going to limit my advertising for this video. But the point I'm trying to make is that what Preach is talking about, the cost of failure as a man to doing the things that they expect you to do as a man is very high, to the point where the pressure of just being, of just existing, if you're not careful, if you don't actually have people to teach you and to show you how to navigate the world, it becomes very, very dangerous to just walk around. You can find people doing terrible things and resorting to worst case scenarios. So yeah, there's a reason why this platform exists, and I think they're making a very good point about that. And this is Jordan Peterson. Let's hear what Abba has to talk about it.
Peterson comes on
Bigger than just oops.
Jordan Peterson comes on the scene and he says to men, clean your room, and he turns into this huge sensation. And a lot of people just don't understand, especially women. They're like, what is so poignant about this? And I'm like, do you not recognize that men were so much in need of that kind of stuff, about telling them to take responsibility for their own lives and how to do it, that they turned to just even that simple piece of advice became so important? Do you not understand that there's such a need for dudes to have their issues addressed? It's not to say that women don't deal with a lot of terrible stuff. And I agree with you. If you want to say that you are more disadvantaged, I would probably agree with you. But people don't live on a macro scale. I do not live as a black man thinking about all black people all the time. I'm thinking about my personal experiences. I'm walking through life. So when you go up to a man and you say your opinions are invalid and your issues are invalid because women suffer more, well, on a macro scale, I could understand what you're trying to say. But on a micro scale, which is how most people assimilate their experiences, I'm like, well, you're just telling me I don't matter.
You see, this is the thing about arguments, and I will even take it to pull across just the way people communicate generally, which is that when you come to somebody with an issue, right? What I noticed, for example, with I guess my relationship or my marriage right now, is that there is the idea of what should be, and then there is almost the refusal to acknowledge what is at the individual level. So you find yourself having to decide who you can talk to, who can actually understand what you're saying, and who makes sense, basically. Because the reason why I love this video and I love Abba in this way is he's able to explain why some things are the way they are. Like, globally speaking, there are bigger problems than my problems as a Cameroonian living in the US immigrant 30-something who is divorced or getting divorced, right? There are way bigger issues. There are way macro things, global warming, there's like a lot of things that I'm privileged, you can think about that. At an individual level, however, the fact that I'm going through one of the most difficult, heartbreaking experiences of my life, if I'm having a conversation with someone and the person tries to tell me like, oh, you're not the first person to get divorced, it was going to happen, you're going to be fine, think about this, think about that. It's almost like, wait, so you're telling me that what I'm feeling is invalid? I should not feel the way I'm feeling because you think that you know better than me about what is good for me. And pulling down to what Abba is saying, like, yeah, we get it that women have issues and there are all these things that are terrible in the world. It's globally speaking, it makes a lot of sense. When you look at the grand scheme of things, it makes a lot of sense. But it doesn't mean that you're going to invalidate my individual experience simply because in the grand scheme of things, it makes a lot of sense. Because it will be the same thing as me refusing to validate the grand scheme of things and tell you, you know what, all of that doesn't matter. All that matters is mine. Because you can't just pick one or the other. Telling somebody who is going through a difficult time that they're going to be fine or they're going to be okay, it might sound like you're trying to encourage them, and depending on the way you say it, they could actually get it. But sometimes people almost always just like, it's just a divorce. Like, what are you going to do with it? Like 50% of marriages end in divorce. This is America. Deal with it. And those feelings might come from a place of maybe they've gone through it, they've had to deal with it so many times that they don't care about it anymore. But for someone like me who's going through it for the first time, who's going through a lot of emotions that I can't even label, it's not nice. It's not nice at all. And I think there are many people who do that in different levels, whether it's going through difficulties in school, pregnancies, heartbreaks, breakups, and things like that. So I think we have to, if anything, we have to acknowledge that, first of all, we don't know everything. And secondly, the fact that something globally makes sense to look at it from one direction doesn't mean that we should forget the individual aspect of things. And yeah.
Telling me my problems, people simulate their experiences. I'm like, well, you're just telling me I don't matter. You're telling me my problems don't matter. So then I'm going to turn away from you. And then f***ers love to jump in. They'll be like, we as a community have created environments where men stop lying. First off, when you go into those environments, they start looking at you like, you better keep quiet, say only the right things, and say the right way. That's not inviting. That's not appealing. So then men have turned towards men's circles to find people who understand them and speak the way that they do and resonate with their problems. So when you sit there from afar, you're like, man, this red pill community is trash. Well, great. I think it's great that you keep saying that, but here's the problem. What's the alternative? We can't be on TV talking about our problems because nobody cares and we'll get canceled. I've seen so many men's dude when I was from the early 2000s to like mid 2010, right? Just destroyed and taken off the air because they were toxic and unacceptable, right? But women's TV shows, they can go on for years. They can say the craziest stuff, the most foul things, fine for television. But we have no spaces like that.
It's not even that you didn't present no alternative. I don't believe that it was for them to present them, because they have their own issues. But when others presented other alternatives for other people, they got shut down.
Yep.
It's not so much it was like it's like it was your job to present something other. No, it's like asking for men to present alternatives for women. No, we don't know the reality, and you are better placed to know that.
Wait, what are you talking about? Derek Jackson?
Sure. But because
I love that. Look at Emma's face. If you don't know who Derek Jackson is, I'm not about to start that whole soliloquy of who he is. But summary is, he is, not even was. This, I guess I would say, he's a YouTuber content creator who has made so much content and probably made a lot of money on basically pandering to women and saying things that women want to hear. And recently, I don't know whether it was before or after this video, he got caught basically going against the principles that he was sharing on his channel. So find out. You probably hear about it better articulated by other people. I'm not the one to bring that to you yet. This is like my first video on this, so relax. We're not going that deep yet.
Derek Jackson happened and was in line with what you're saying, you let him slide, right? But other people, you shut that down real quick. I don't think that it's for you to give other alternative, but whenever that alternative happens, you shut it down and you cancel it.
Yep.
And then it just gets worse. What you do by doing that is that you create martyrs. And then they get to evolve and to evolve. Every time Jordan Peterson was getting... They tried to cancel him, or they tried to do something like that, or they tried to shut them down, he gained more power and more people. Every time you do that, you're doing a disservice to your own self.
Yep.
But whatever.
So listen, whether you're a woman, whatever, listen, it behooves you to acknowledge the fact that men deal with problems. All right? It does not take away from your issues. It does not mean that you're invalidated, but men are struggling and suffering from certain things. And it's a hard knock life out there. Just because we're not as vocal about it as you guys are, we don't talk about it the same way you do, doesn't mean it's not there. It doesn't mean it's not there. Even this channel, all right? I don't think you throw us in the red pill area, but, we definitely have some ideas that congregate with them as well, right? Even this channel, do you not recognize why we got so popular so fast, aside from the fact that we got decent commentary? Part of it is we filled the void. So yeah, as far as the red pill stuff and all this whole manosphere and stuff like that, men need their outlets. And I'm not saying it's necessarily the most positive one. I'm not saying that, but until there's resources to tell men how to do this stuff effectively and do it well, until women in society in general stops invalidating what men go through, right? We're not going to fix these issues. We're just not. So it's a two-part thing.
It's not getting solved.
Here's why I disagree. I think men for the first time are like venting on a loud platform and very directly. And they've been holding it in for so long that some of it's very toxic.
You know what he just said right here? It's not even exactly, but it's one of the things that I've had to really deal with. Because as much as I'm going through a bunch of the emotions that I'm going through this divorce, there are things that I still need to learn how to articulate because I never even had the vocabulary to articulate them. As much as I read a lot of books, I read a lot of personal development books, self-help books that have to do with building the self, discipline, building businesses and things like that. But I never really got into reading about relationships because most of the book about relationships seemed to appeal to a certain kind of personality that was, I don't want to say soft, I don't want to say emotional. It feels like, but I'll just say it. A lot of the books that I read about relationships seem to speak to women. Maybe I'm wrong, but it didn't appeal to my view of the world the way I would like to understand things, because personal development is very, I guess I'll say, logical. There's a logical approach to it. And even if you tell me that what marriage relationships are not logical or that they're emotional, well, emotions die down. And that we will go into a whole different tangent about how, you're not just the only feelings, you also need to be able to make logical decisions about who you want to be with. For example, if somebody is a risk-taking person who puts you in danger whenever you hang out with them, emotionally, you might feel attracted to these people because they, provide these emotions and give you high adrenaline, which are very nice. But logically speaking, the risk of hanging out with them increases your chance of falling into danger. So you have to make a logical decision of not hanging out with them much, whether this person is like, makes your heart flutters. So just to summarize this, I feel like what Abba is saying right now about the fact that a lot of the content that is coming out is toxic, it's true. Like, there are people who are speaking from a place of hurt, and I can see myself, like, I've had to hold myself back a lot. The reason I'm even talking about this now on my channel and even talking about it vaguely the way I'm talking is because I've gotten to a point where I feel a little bit comfortable to start, removing the pressure, because there's like a lot of pressure. And if I just pop it, it's going to explode. Like, things are going to come out that I will probably look back to a couple of months back and be like, oh man, I wish I didn't say that. I wish I hadn't said this to this person. I wish I hadn't done this. Because I know and I've seen what happens when I get too angry to express and hold those emotions and actually work through them. And so, totally understandable. There are people who are creating some of this content, and maybe I'm actually sounding that way right now, I don't know, who are very angry, very upset. Their hearts have been broken, they feel betrayed, they feel like women are whatever they think that they are, and they never want you to have to do anything loving and nice and kind. And even now, as I'm going through this, I'm just still self-aware enough to know that my situation is individual. This is not like a generalized thing, like all women are like this, or this is what will happen if you do this. Like, we can't just take one situation and generalize it to everybody else's situation. But there is a possibility that people will do that. It's very much there. People who have 1, 2, 3 events in their lives that transform them. Like, I mean, how many times I've had my heart broken a couple of times. I've broken hearts myself. I used to write about this thing a lot. Like, ask a girl out. She was like, no. I remember I had a crush who kissed somebody when they were doing a truth or dare. Like, I've written about this thing. So it's very possible. I can see the possibility where, because of the negative experiences that some men can have with women, they can end up thinking that women are, TRA, whatever. The same way in the reverse, where you have women who say all men are this or all men are that. So it's not a one-side thing. Yeah.
Get it out. Get it all out. In for so long that on a loud platform and very directly. And they've been holding it in for so long that some of it's very toxic. Get it out. Get it all out. And then after you've chilled out, we've calmed down, and then, some of this has taken some time, that we could breathe and like talk about it some more and get deeper in there, right? Because a lot of these problems are super valid. Like I said, but you cannot discount all of it. So that was my thoughts about the red pill community. People have been asking me about that for a while. I'm glad I went through that phase because it helped me out. And I'm glad I started doing these videos because I got to vent that shit out. Because I'm telling you, I was made to feel crazy my whole life, even by other men. Other men was like, you're supposed to bear it. I'm like, why are we tolerating this? I would never think of like doing that to somebody else, but we as men. And everyone just made me think like, yo, it's not important. I'm like, no, this is real. This is real. And when you guys make people feel like their problems are not real, they become angry because their problems on the inside just fester. And
this is almost the end of the video, and this is the part. I think I should just let Abba finish, and we'll come down to that. Yeah.
I still get it sometimes, because their problems on the inside just fester. And I still get it sometimes, sometimes I I talk about these problems and I can start to feel again the issues that I had back then. And it kind of comes out of me and I'm just like, where's this coming from? I'm like, I still need more time to get it all out. So yeah, once again, I'll just say this to end. Ladies, I recognize y'all have real problems and I'll never stop, try to defend y'all from those issues. And if I can, I want to help, but I think there has to be room for men to be able to deal with those issues without everyone trying to interfere, because we just don't have outlets. Not the way y'all do. Not the way y'all do. And if you don't believe me, try to find outlets on mainstream media for men to talk about their stuff candidly. You won't. You know where we turn to? Podcasts. C'est pas ça?
That's what it is. That's why there's a lot more men podcasts than women. That's how this meme. Why do men don't deal with the issues but instead they just do podcasts? Because that's the outlet. That's where we could talk it out.
Yeah. And
podcast is very niche. Mm-hmm. It's very niche. So if it's niche, I can find a group of niche people that go through the same that I'm going. And it's free. I'm not gonna be, I got less chances of being canceled. So that's why they do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on this topic.
So yeah, if you watch the video, probably want to check the link out in the description. It's going to be there. You can go and check out the whole full video on Abba and Preach. And this is probably one of the most serious videos I've ever watched from them, particularly from Abba. My mind was really going to the idea of the African community not having this kind of content, and still the dichotomy of the fact that the African community still exists within the global community, and these ideas and these things that Abba is talking about is slowly eating across the globe. So it's not just about African thing. But the reason why I keep wanting to mention the African community is because even within the community itself, even the problems of the women, not just the men, aren't talked about. The women might have communities that allow them to cope, not to deal with them, just to cope with these things. Just to, there's some cultural statements that allow them it's like there's this general community understanding that this is the way you behave as a woman, this is the way you behave as a man. And so you have situations where women can complain about things and cry and talk to their moms, talk to their mother-in-laws and deal with them. But I've hardly come across situations where a father-in-law and a son-in-law have situations where they can talk about relationships or marriage and things like that. And even for me and my dad, is now that we are dealing with these things, because I am going through a divorce where we're having conversations that I think I should have had before I started getting married. Do I blame my father for that? Hell no. Like, this man has done his best to raise the kids that he has raised, and mostly he has been able to raise us by the example that he gave by his own life. Like, I want to even go as far as to assume that the African community is not a community where you even talk, which is why I see a lot of correlations between the African community and the African American community, because a lot of the issues that they talk about lack of communication, lack of community, lack of father figures who actually educate boys how to be men of character, is because of this lack of dialogue. And I feel like my generation is going to be the one to bridge that. But even as much as I feel that that's the case, I also see the situation where my generation is becoming more like the women that these people who are doing this red pill content are talking about and are scaring people away from. And so I really wanted to make this video because I think that I want to start a conversation about this. Maybe I'm just delusional. Right? Maybe I've just been in this bubble where I think that because I'm consuming a lot of this content that, the world is coming to an end. This is true. Culture is changing. But on the other hand, I've seen and I'm able to think about many instances in my past relationships before I got married, and now even in my divorce, where I'm like, wow, if I had known some of these things about taking responsibility, about character, about ownership of and emotions and victimizations, like if I had actually had this information and a place to feel like I'm not crazy, I could have handled it a lot much better. It doesn't mean that in the future I'm going to suddenly become the Superman of relationships and become much better at this. I mean, I'm still going through it right now. But there is a need for a place where men, African American men, I think even white, like men should be able to express their emotions, should be able to talk about things candidly. And here's the kicker. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychotherapist. I don't have any training of any kind. The way I have seen how I discuss issues like this with my fellow friends who are men is very different from the way the media exposes the way women talk about their issues. Like this, for example, I've been going through my divorce and talking to my best man about these things. Like he's been keeping me, like really helping me out with dealing with certain things a lot. Like literally a couple of days ago, a friend gave me advice on something to do, which was the kind of practical advice that I needed to hear. It wasn't, lovey-dovey, softy, like, oh, you're going to be okay. It wasn't, that's not the kind of thing that I want to hear. People don't understand. I think people don't get that. As a man, the way you receive information, the way you communicate is different. And I keep saying I'm not a therapist, scientist, or anything because I don't even know the language to explain that. It doesn't mean that you have to use violence. There is just a way of communication that is not the same way women understand or operate. And I think the reason why we think the rap community is necessary, even though it's false, is because a lot of the content that I've consumed, whether it's Kevin Samuels or MTR or Abba and Preach, has brought me to a place where I'm able to look at my past and see where things did not go because of what I did or what I didn't do or things that I did not understand. And I think that a lot of men need to actually consume this content to make their own decisions, not because all these people are true, because sometimes Abba and Preach say things that I'm like, yeah, I don't agree with you guys. And that's the thing about this content, right? I'm going to just wrap up with this. That's the thing about this content, because if you go back to the analogy I was talking about, the church analogy in the beginning, we might have, one creator, but you have people who believe in different things, Islam, even you come to Christianity, Presbyterian, Catholic, and people would tell you that we all serve the same God, but the way they do it, the rituals, the names, they're different. And I think that when it comes to the rap community, even though Abba started saying that people have lumped them in it, the rap pill stands for a space for men to feel validated in their difficulties. Maybe not justified. Validate. I use the word validated because validated is like saying, yeah, you know what you're going through is real. Now, whether what you're going through and how you're going to deal with it is acceptable, that's a whole different conversation. And I think that that's what the rap pill does, which is tell people like me who've gone through difficulties that you're not crazy, you're not stupid. The problem now is, how do you move on from there? And that's why people have to use their own sense of, judgment and be able to like, okay, I hear what Kevin Samuels is saying. He has a lot of points, but here's where it doesn't make any sense. And I think that's where people feel, and that's why people look at the red pill community and be like, oh, that sucks or that's terrible. Because the individuals within the community, I guess they don't have enough discernment to figure out when their leader is just a human being like them. But anyway, that was my reaction to this particular video. It feels a little bit different to this kind of reaction. I feel like I've talked for too long. It's probably going to be a very long video. But I'll have to edit this one. Yeah, I think it deserves some proper editing. And if you haven't checked out Abba and Preach yet, you should. I'll put the link in the description. You can watch them. And let me know, actually, if you would like this kind of content that has to do with like relationships and stuff like this. I'm a little bit wary about doing more without knowing your perspective. So just let me know if you like it. And the question that I have for you, if you're watching this as an African, or maybe not even as an African, do you think that the rap community is something that African men need? I'm not saying that other men don't need. I'm just curious. I'm trying to find out if some of the concepts, some of the ideas can actually cut across board, because with the rate I've seen immigrants behave and carry on the culture of the countries in which they live, my big fear is that in the next couple of years, next couple of decades, it's going to be a global problem, not just like a American thing. So let me know what you think. I would love to have a conversation. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. My name is Kamga. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet and you're watching up to this point, maybe you should. All right, I'll see you in the next one.